After decades of Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer have stepped aside for a new and diverse governance. First elected to Congress in 2013, Katherine Clark has emerged as a staunch presence, ascending the ranks of the Democratic caucus to Assistant Speaker and now Minority Whip. Along with Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Representatives Pete Aguilar and James Clyburn, she guides the party as an advocate for equality and justice. Congresswoman Katherine Clark, thank you for joining us here at Urban Media Arts.
It is so good to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
It is really a pleasure. I'd like to initially get started with a very important anniversary, the Dobbs decision, which occurred, the 1-year anniversary was June 24th of this year. So June 24 and 22, Justice Alito, he brought forth his opinion as to why abortion is not constitutional. How did you, if you can walk us through your feelings when you found out about that reversal?
Yeah, it was hard to believe that in 2022 in the United States of America, for the first time, we were going to roll back constitutional protections. We've often not made the progress we needed to, but this was really unprecedented to take away 50 years of precedent constitutional protections. And even though that opinion had been leaked, and so we had some idea of what was coming, to see it in black and white, to see that opinion was shocking and so sad for women and people of this country.
It was particularly pointed because he took advantage of something called, I believe, stare decisis, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, where he actually reversed a Supreme Court decision. And I know that you've been very staunch in your efforts to reverse this with a petition in Congress. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. When Democrats were in charge, had the majority in the House, 2 times we passed the Women's Health Protection Act, we call WIPA. And it is really our statement to the American people that we need to make sure that Roe v. Wade constitutional protections for the right to have an abortion, to make your own health care decisions, is codified in federal statute. And we are lucky here in the Commonwealth to have actually expanded abortion access in light of Dobbs. But let's be clear, the Republicans are on a march to a federal abortion ban. That is what they work for every day. And we're seeing them insert those bans into bills that have never, ever been sort of this contested and bringing this issue into it. So just a few weeks ago in the House, we did the National Defense Reauthorization Bill, and they brought abortion into it for our veterans.
Yes, and I believe that they are trying to not reimburse or pay for veterans that need to travel outside of the state if they need abortion services or surgically induced abortions, which has been a very, very big fight. I don't want to stay too much on this because we don't have a lot of time. I'd like to pivot to to inflation. So since COVID, inflation, rising costs have been a big issue, particularly with the middle class.
Right.
What are your efforts to help the effects of COVID moving forward?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that Bidenomics is working. And the Biden administration with Democrats in Congress are focused on growing the economy by growing the middle class. So what does that mean for people? Like you mentioned, we've had these twin shocks of both the pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine that sent gas prices up. We saw a rise in grocery prices. Here in Massachusetts, the cost of housing continues to be a real struggle for families in my district and across the state. But what we've seen is the ability with Bidenomics to grow that economy. Inflation has been reduced for the last 12 months. Every month it's come back down. And for the first time, we're seeing wages are now exceeding costs. So real wage growth is a game changer for families. And we have been focused on reducing those costs. A great example that we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary was the vote in the Inflation Reduction Act that had 0 Republican support in the House to put a cap on insulin so that people would only pay $35 out of pocket. And when that went into effect in January of this year, we saw all the major insulin makers match that, because our cap only went for Medicare recipients, for our seniors. But these companies then were forced to match it.
Yes.
and really make those healthcare cost savings, be very real for families. And we saw that also with the PACT Act that we're coming up on August 9th of a really important anniversary. And that act is part of our pact with our veterans, saying if you were exposed to toxic chemicals, either through burn pits or Agent Orange, you are entitled to the health care that you need at reduced cost to you. And this is a game changer for our Vietnam veterans.
Yes.
And we have an important deadline coming up that Democrats were able to get this done. And if you're a qualified veteran, and you can be paid for the past year if you get your application in by August 9th. So that's an important deadline coming up for our veterans, and they can check in with our office or with their local veterans office to see if they qualify and how they can apply for those. But we want veterans to have the full benefit they're entitled to. So hope that everyone who thinks they may qualify will apply by August 9th. You're entitled to the benefit going forward, even if you miss that deadline, but that will let you get what you deserved in money going back over the last year.
That is wonderful. So for the benefit of our viewers and perhaps any veterans that are also watching this broadcast, who would they contact for this? Who would they contact to apply, or can they do it online?
You can do it online on the VA website. You can certainly call my office and also your local veteran in your city or town.
That is amazing. And health costs are, I believe, the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country.
Right.
So the fact that the Democratic caucus is so forward in this effort to reduce health costs goes a long way economically, especially for the middle class that have been suffering so much under the crushing costs of housing and
right.
food. It has been, and you can actually feel as you're out and about, people are stressed. In the supermarket, you see mothers with their husbands and children. They're stressed when they get to the checkout line. And it can be disheartening, but I applaud you in your effort, and along with the Democratic caucus, to move forward with these legislative changes. So one of the other issues I wanted to touch on was gun violence. You've been a big advocate for gun control, so that we reduce this alarming rate of shootings in the United States. Could you speak about that a little bit?
Sure. Our rates of gun violence are an American tragedy, and it's a uniquely American problem. And we have to take action. We've talked about this. We were able a year ago to pass the first gun safety bill in 30 years in Congress, but that's an important step, but we need to do more. And as we see school shootings, active shooting drills becoming part of our children's lives, the stress, talk about stress and anxiety that we are hearing from young people, that we are hearing from parents and families and people around this country who want to be able to go worship, go to the movies, to a shopping center, just do it without fear of becoming a mass casualty. And I know that my children have had a lot of anxiety about this, and that is shared by so many families across this country. This is a policy choice. We're seeing the GOP continue to choose guns over kids, and we have to change that. We can do things in this country that respects responsible gun owners and also can make a difference and increase the safety and security of our kids and communities.
In terms of pushing legislation through the House, how difficult is it to pull some of the Republicans away from voting along party lines? How difficult is that? Is that one of your biggest struggles to?
It's extremely difficult. The NRA has moved from, when I was growing up, the NRA was about gun safety and sportsmanship, but it really moved into a special interest at protecting the gun industry at all costs. And those costs are being borne out by our kids in fear, anxiety, and loss of life and injury. And we can do things about this. We can take simple steps like expanded background checks so that everybody is subject to a background check to keep guns out of the hands of criminals, of those who are in a mental health crisis. And, this ties back into our veterans and so much of the work that veterans groups are doing to help, just sometimes if you can delay access to a gun by 10 minutes, you can prevent that suicide. And all of this work is so important and should be bipartisan. And we just have to stay with this fight because it's so crucial to the security of our families.
And that's like a large issue of it, to make this more of a bipartisan ideology as opposed to just voting along party lines and saying, no, this is something that we all deal with. And I believe I've seen commercials for the gun locks, whereas if someone is contemplating doing something, just taking the time to take the gun lock off may be long enough to stop whatever action they were intending, which goes a long way. In terms of the future, what do you see for the future of the Democratic caucus?
Our future is pretty bright, and we are looking at 24, and we are very optimistic that we are going to regain the majority. And the answer why is pretty simple. We have kept our focus on the American family. We have kept our focus on putting those policies that are reducing costs, creating great paying jobs, and making sure that our communities are safer and that people have that sense of security. And when we talk about growing the middle class, I used to get asked all the time, is that an income number? And it's really more of an attitude and a feeling of, if I have my job and I'm working, I can provide and meet my family's needs, whether that's housing, groceries, fuel in the car, a little savings and a chance at college, if that's what your child wants. And that's where our focus is, putting those policies together that help us grow the middle class. So those who are not in it can get in the middle class, and those who are in it can stay there and have that sense of security. And what we're seeing is all the economic indicators are showing that we are in a real, true recovery from those twin shocks we talked about of the pandemic and Russia's invasion, and that people are starting to feel that sense of security return to their financial lives. So it's not mission accomplished, but we've made great strides with our infrastructure bill, with the CHIPS and Science Act that has returned manufacturing jobs to the United States, to our shores, and with the IRA that helped not only make historic investment in climate resilience and addressing climate change, but also in reducing those healthcare costs through insulin, keeping insurance premiums down, really key things for the security and financial well-being of the American people.
With that being said, Minority Whip Clark, thank you so much for joining us here at Urban Media Arts here in Malden, your old stomping ground. We appreciate you taking
My
time.
always stomping ground.
You're always here. We appreciate you and your staff stopping by here to advise us as to the direction in which the Democratic Caucus is going, and continued success to you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.